It's great to see you again. I'm Taron. This is Last Week in Crypto. And today we'll be discussing the US's battle with inflation, as US consumer inflation dips marginally year over year in April. The Fed is facing a tough balancing act with stubbornly high inflation, but there are encouraging signs on the horizon. Then we'll talk about the fact that the BRICS nations are considering a shared currency to challenge the US dollar's stronghold on global trade. Following that up, we'll take a look at the news of Grayscale Investments filing for approval of 3 new crypto-focused ETFs. And lastly, we'll discuss Tether's first quarter assurance report, which outshines even BlackRock's first quarter. There's a lot to cover, so let's just dive right in. Despite efforts to cool down the economy, US consumer inflation saw a minor decrease to 4.9% year-on-year, but remains stubbornly above pre-pandemic levels. Experts foresee rent inflation and airline fares dropping, but hitting the 2% inflation target is a long journey. As inflation rates continue to remain elevated, the slight deceleration allows the Fed to consider pausing rate hikes. However, it's still uncertain whether the US economy is sufficiently cooled down for policymakers to make that call. But with credit conditions becoming more restrictive due to stress in the banking sector following the collapse of several regional banks, the economy could experience a slowdown, consequently diminishing the necessity for additional interest rate hikes. Despite the slight easing in consumer inflation, the situation remains a serious concern. While commendable, the Federal Reserve's efforts to rein in inflation are merely skimming the surface of a deeper issue. The persistently high inflation rates are a clear indication of structural economic imbalances that are straining under the weight of consistent interest rate hikes. And the recent collapse of regional banks exposes large cracks in the banking sector, which is alarming. The Fed is still considering further interest rate hikes, but the question is for how long? Will the Fed continue its restrictive policy, or is it time for a pivot? I guess we'll have to wait and see. BRICS nations are gearing up to discuss a game-changing proposal, a shared currency for global trade. The US dollar's appreciation has negatively affected emerging markets, and these economic powerhouses are looking to explore alternatives. Together, the BRICS nations represent a significant economic force with over 40% of the world's population and almost 1/3 of global economic output. If successful, this move could redefine the global financial landscape and give these nations more control over their economic future. Although some experts believe that the US dollar will remain dominant, the BRICS alliance is pursuing financial independence and could potentially alter global trade dynamics. The road to this monumental shift will be challenging, given the complexities of global economics and the established status quo. The upcoming summit in Johannesburg will undoubtedly be an important discussion and could be a crucial turning point. We'll have to wait and see what unfolds. Grayscale Investments has filed for 3 new crypto-focused ETFs despite facing regulatory hurdles. The proposed funds would invest in a wide range of crypto assets and technologies, broadening investment opportunities in this dynamic market. The proposed ETFs include an Ethereum futures ETF, a global Bitcoin composite ETF, and a privacy ETF. Launching these funds could provide investors with diverse exposure to the crypto market. The SEC's reluctance to approve Grayscale's previous efforts to introduce spot Bitcoin ETFs raises questions about whether Grayscale's ambitious plan will succeed. Digital Currency Group, the parent company of Grayscale, has also been making headlines due to one of its subsidiaries, Genesis Global Capital, filing for bankruptcy in January. This subsidiary was the biggest cryptocurrency lender in the industry, but unfortunately got caught up in the FTX controversy. Thank you, Sam, bankrupt fraud. Some are concerned that this would hurt the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. And last June, the SEC turned down Grayscale's request to transform the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust into an exchange-traded fund. The regulator claimed the proposal failed to satisfy anti-fraud and investor protection criteria. The cryptocurrency sector has found itself progressively in conflict with the SEC due to the regulator's intensified scrutiny and regulatory measures on digital asset offerings. With the crypto industry's rapid growth, it's high time regulators reconsider their stance and give institutional investors access to crypto in the form of these ETFs. The SEC's seemingly slow and overcautious approach is a bottleneck stifling the crypto industry's growth. It's about time they embrace the inevitable and start facilitating rather than stonewalling the rise of cryptocurrencies. ETFs offer institutional investors a reliable and steady foundation which can effectively promote greater adoption of cryptocurrencies. I look forward to hearing the outcome of these proposed funds and seeing what effects they could have on the industry. For our last story today, we'll be discussing Tether, the largest of the stablecoin issues. It isn't just flourishing, it appears to be dominating. Its Q1 2023 assurance report, given the green light by BDO Italia, reveals record-breaking excess reserves hitting $2.44 billion. The report is somewhat of an eye-opener. The report now includes physical gold, overnight repos, corporate bonds, and Bitcoin ownership. The majority of Tether's reserves are invested in US Treasury securities, highlighting their strategic investment approach. Tether is decreasing its dependency on straightforward bank deposits for liquidity, turning to the repo market as an extra safety layer to preserve liquidity for its users. The report shows Tether's supposed dedication to transparency, with a lion's share of its investments positioned in cash, cash equivalents, and other short-term deposits, making up approximately 85% of the total. Notably, the report showcases a substantial 25% reduction in secured loans, moving from 8.7% to 6.5% of this asset class within the overall reserves, and marking a record high allocation of assets in US Treasury bills. The total reserves include a 4% share of gold and 2% of Bitcoin. All newly minted tokens have been either invested in US Treasury bills or put into repurchase agreements, also known as overnight repos. Overnight repos are commonly used in the financial markets to manage liquidity and are seen as a safe and flexible mechanism for institutions to borrow and lend short-term funds. Tether's Q1 income overshadows BlackRock's, racking up a hefty $1.48 billion. Now, this assurance report certainly paints a rosy picture of the company's financial standing, with its impressive net income and rapidly growing reserves. As someone who closely examines the cryptocurrency industry, I can't help but have some reservations. This is a company that's been drenched in controversy for years, with opaque operations and a long history of legal challenges. The inclusion of new reserve categories like physical gold and Bitcoin might be touted as increased transparency, but it could also be seen as an attempt to obscure the actual liquidity of their reserves. While seemingly prudent, reliance on US Treasury securities could also expose Tether to significant interest rate risk, especially considering the current monetary policy in the US. And lastly, while it's impressive that Tether outperformed BlackRock in net income, it's crucial to note that they operate in largely unregulated markets with considerably higher risk profiles. And as I mentioned, their business practices have raised some concerns. So it's a good idea to avoid being dazzled by raw numbers. I wonder what's in store for Q2. Let me know what you think about any of the stories I've covered today. I'm always interested to hear what you have to say. If you enjoyed this video, I would very much appreciate it if you hit that thumbs up button. It helps me to be seen by a larger audience and grow my channel. You can find some links to my socials in the description below, as well as some referrals that'll definitely benefit me, but might benefit you too. There's always a lot happening in the world of crypto, and if you want to stay updated on the developments and join the conversation, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Have a great weekend.